All right, gang, Matt Dixon with Purple Patch, of course. And here we are, we venture into the meat and potatoes. Yesterday, great kickoff to Performance Reset. But now we get together and we march in through Saturday. And to kick it off today, we're going to send you out on a little activity, an option of either walking or running. But before we do, before you get your fluids, before you pull your socks up, we want to go through some fundamentals, give you something to think about both today and in all of your subsequent walks or runs that you go on. And so what we thought is we need a really good case study of good running form. And so I've invited Purple Patch Pro Sarah Piampiano to be our running model today. And you might just notice as you go through today that there's a little bump down there, so it's 2 for the price of 1. But anyway, let's get back to our running and walking form. This is a subject that is prone to massive overcomplication. And so what we're going to do is strip it down to some elements that you can think about and remember and not forget. In fact, there are 3 main ones with a little bonus. And so we're going to go through all 3 of those and then show you some in flight. So what are they? Well, the first thing that we want to be thinking about is really good posture. Posture is an incredibly important element of any sport that you do, and it's highlighted in running. So we've got Sarah here slouching a little bit. Instead, we want to see Sarah stand up nice and tall and nice and strong. Now, what posture isn't, which is a common mistake of people, is to see Sarah retracting her shoulders back and leaning with her chest. That isn't good posture. You're relaxed and stay nice and supple. So if you start to feel fatigue, if you start to feel like your form's declining, if your speed is dropping off, the first thing you want to do is a nice long spine, and we should see a nice line right between ear, shoulder, hip, all the way down to ankle. And that is number 1. The second element that we want to think about in running or walking is to make sure that we have gravity working in our favor. And so what we're going to have Sarah do is just get her center of balance in front of her. And she almost right now wants to start walking or running. Now, there's a couple of common mistakes that we see here. As you have Sarah come back to neutral, we'll come and just see her do it really well one more time. And you notice that the lean is coming from the ankles. So she's retaining good posture while she's getting to a little bit of lean. A couple of mistakes that people do when they're running is to think about this, but start the lean from the waist. We don't want any hinge in the waist. We want to keep that nice neutral line. So she comes up and she leans from the ankles. Perfect. Another common mistake, particularly when people get fatigued in running, is they start to lift their chin or lean back on the heels. We call that leading with the hips. We want to avoid that at all costs. And so now we've got 2 elements. Stand tall, good posture, get the lean from the hips. So now let's start to apply this. Let's get Sarah in action and get her running, and we'll start to include the 3rd element of good form. We have the treadmill belt starting to build up, and as Sarah just runs into good, smooth, fluid running, she's going to think about standing nice and tall. She's going to think about Billy Bump, and she's going to hold that as much as she can. And she's just going to have a very, very subtle lean from the ankles. And that's going to help promote good leg speed and good light running. And then we're on to the 3rd element of good running form. And you know what it begins with? Not your feet, not your legs, but with your arms. The arms are the great moderators. One of the elements we're looking for, one of the outcomes in running, is to try and think about good foot speed. But in order to get there, the arms are the critical moderators. So the first thing we want to do with Sarah is to make sure that she's carrying the arms nice and tidy. We want to have nice short levers. So you can see there's a really small gap between her forearm and bicep. The second element is that we want to have the swing be active behind the body and passive in front. You'll see many runners leading with their arms, as Sarah's showing us there. The problem with that is as soon as you're leading with the arm out in front of you, your opposite leg is going to go out in front of you and cause deceleration. That's promoting injury risk and it's slowing your leg speed. So instead, she stays nice and supple with arms driving back. It's almost like a coiling spring or rubber band and then releasing it. A second common mistake that we see, particularly when athletes start to get tired, is they start to go very stiff in the shoulders and they start to hold the shoulders up there. So instead, you want to drop the shoulders down. We sometimes talk about being like a prize fighter, a boxer, really supple and really posture and really smooth. So now, gang, we've got three main elements: standing tall, good lean, and beautiful arm carriage. Now, if Sarah wants to pick up her leg speed, she does something very simple. She just picks up her arm speed. And that's the governor as she wants to go forward and run a little bit more aggressive. So now, I'm going to be a little cruel. I'm going to ask Sarah to pick up the pace a little bit. As a pro athlete, even one with the bump, she should be able to go a little faster. So now Sarah's running at a pretty good pace, at about 6:30 to 6:45 pace. And we come to the fourth main element. And that's when you really care about going in that direction, going fast. And this is the only time in running that you do think about what's happening at the foot. So in order for her to have good promotion, standing tall, good lean, arm carriage, and the final little ingredient is she's just going to push through her big toe. And that's that spring, and she's pushing off through that big toe, getting good extension. And you can see how she's just getting that nice extension. That's creating leg drive, and that is creating propulsion in this direction. The challenge with this is that it's going to boost your heart rate, it's going to boost your breathing, and come at a more of a cost. So you need to be selective how often and when you're going to think about driving in that direction. Super. 4 main elements, 3, and the bonus of the foot drive. But what about if you're gassed? What about if you're running out of good form and you feel like your technique is collapsing? Or what about if you don't run at all? So we're going to have Sarah drop down to walking. Let's discuss really good walking form. Well, some of the gang here at the Performance Reset, you might never dream of running. But walking is a really healthy activity, but we want to do it with purpose. We also have a lot of runners who also get gassed a lot. They run out of breath. They run for a quarter of a mile, a half a mile. Ooh, it's really hard. What do? Do you just slow down and run with poor form? And then we even have Ironman athletes that need to get through 26 miles of running off of 112 miles of biking and a 2.4 mile swim before. How do you do that while running with good form? You utilize walking. And so it's important for every one of us here to know how to walk with purpose. The good news is it's very similar to good running form. You want to stand tall, good posture, the same across all sports. The second element, we want to get a nice lean forward. So when you're out walking or power walking, walking with purpose, good arm carry, good lean forward. And thirdly, you want to have good arm drive. Now you'll notice that Sarah naturally, she's already done it in front of me, she's doing it really well, naturally let her arms drop down to her side. And that's because we don't care about arm speed when we're walking. And so we don't need short levers, we can let the levers go long. But what we do want is a good drive back behind her. And so she's not walking with her arms out in front of her, she's driving instead, thinking about the arms driving back. Those are the elements of a good walking form, and then we can indeed add one little element, which is pushing through the big toe, and that's going to enable you to walk faster. Those are the elements that we need. And so these are the key things that I want you to think about. Good posture, good lean, arm carriage, and sometimes a little bit of spice through that big toe. How do you improve all of these elements? There's one magic ingredient, and it's simple, and it's something that might raise your heart rate just by hearing it, but it's called a hill. And so Sarah is going to keep walking, and I'm going to ask her to move it up to a 5% grade. When you're running or walking against a hill, it promotes every one of these elements. It is really easy to get to good posture. You're going to naturally want to lean into the hill. It's going to be almost impossible for you to run or walk with your arms in front. It's going to promote the posterior drive or driving behind. And on top of it, it's much more intuitive to go off of the big toe. So the next time you think about walking up a hill or running up a hill, don't worry, it is your best performance finder. You want to do it with good form every time. This is what we're going to integrate in today's session. And so take a break. Sarah, thank you very much. You can take a break, and we're going to be seeing you later. And for the rest of us, grab a little sip of drink, perhaps your Precision Hydration, pull your socks on, get kitted up, and I'm going to take you through what I want you to do in a little walk or one break as we go ahead. Let's get cracking.